Welcome to another episode of our personal empowerment audio series, Finding Yourself in Paradise. Hi, I'm Michael Benner.
And I'm Steve Snyder, and our program today is about meditation and hypnosis. Really two sides of the same coin. Both occur in the focused passion alpha brainwave state, but meditation is sort of the receive button of the mind, and hypnosis is sort of like the send.
It's rather surprising, at least to me, that this hardly ever occurs to people. You never hear it discussed, and well, personally, as a teacher of both meditation and hypnosis, I know lots of meditators that don't have the foggiest idea what hypnosis is about. I've even met meditators and teachers of meditation that say, watch out for that hypnosis. That's really dangerous stuff. Well, it's no different at all from what the meditators are doing. And then you got this group over here, the hypnotist people and the self-hypnosis people, and maybe they get a little idea what meditation is, but they don't have the same spiritual interest per se. But Steve, I think where we begin comparing the two is looking at what they have in common. We'll talk about some of the differences. They're significant, but this is really that same brainwave state we just talked about, the alpha brainwave state, right?
Yeah, it's really two rooms in the same house. You go through the same front door to get there. The process of getting out of stress, releasing physical tension, letting go of emotional anxiety, releasing confusion, replacing it with relaxation and calmness and clarity. That's how you get into a self-hypnotic or a meditative state. Both occur around 10 cycles per second, like we were talking about in the brainwaves show. But the difference comes there, because with meditation, although there are many kinds of meditation, the basic concept is you get into that state and you just get there and listen. You just receive. You just see what comes through your mind, through your consciousness, through your awareness. And in hypnosis, you generally speaking will have a particular idea of something you want to do, and you go in there to program your mind or to learn something or to create something. Hypnosis is putting stuff in and with an idea in mind of what you want to put in, and meditation is letting stuff out, sometimes with an idea of what you want to let out, like you have a particular problem you want to solve, and sometimes it's just a sort of free-form, let's see what comes up.
We got to work through this, because I'm thinking of it in exactly the opposite way. So we can agree it's a two-way street, but to me the meditation, you say, is letting it out. I think of being open and receptive in meditation. And you said hypnosis is putting it in. Well, to me, that's the law of attraction, where you're really emanating or radiating a magnetic field that then attracts what you want. So I know we agree. We've done this together for 35 years, so let's see if we can iron out our terms a little bit.
Sure. When I say putting stuff in, I mean like using the power of suggestion to take an idea and plant it in your mind over and over again. We talk about using the 4 P's of suggestion: positive, present tense, with practice or persistence or perseverance, a lot of repetition, and then, of course, with passion. That's the most important key. So hypnosis is putting stuff in, meaning you have an idea in mind of what it is you want to attract, what you want to create, and you plant the seed in your mind, and then you, as you said, allow that seed to grow and become a magnet to attract what it is you've planted. Meditation, on the other hand, is where you go in there and sit receptive, either waiting for a certain answer to come to you or just to see what does come to you. And it's less directed, it's more open, it's more free, it's less structured.
Well, even within the field that's generally called meditation, I think there's confusion, because we can have so many different meditation techniques. I think especially in the West, because meditation has been introduced largely through religion or quasi-Eastern philosophy like transcendental meditation, we often see the notion that meditation, or real meditation, is contemplation, a complete emptying of the mind or a clearing of the mind, or as in TM, so-called transcendental meditation, again, one of many techniques, countless techniques, but in this case, a little phrase is repeated, a little mantra is chanted as a point of focus. There's some meditation where you just fixate on the breath in and out to create a sense of mindful detachment. But you and I have always relied, I guess because we're in the West and we're of Western minds and reaching out mostly to people who live in the West, we've done a lot of guided imagery, sensory imagination. We call it visualization, but gosh, you can imagine hearing and smelling and tasting and touching and really take advantage of the whole principle of mind that the imagination doesn't care if something is real, that is perceived by the physical senses, or just sort of invented inside the imagination, that from the brain's point of view, it's all neural impulses, one way or the other. Maybe they came from the depth of the brain, the mind's eye, the imagination. Maybe they came along the optic nerve or one of the other physical senses, but imagination doesn't care. It assumes everything's real.
Yeah, otherwise you wouldn't get scared at scary movies. There's a part of you that knows that it's not real, but there is a big part of your mind, the part that takes over when you move into a meditative or a self-hypnosis state, that doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. As you move into a meditative or a self-hypnotic state, the same alpha brainwave state, as you let go of the outside stimulus and relax and focus within, as your mind slows down a little bit, what happens is that the part of your mind that you call conscious, the thinking part, steps aside. It moves into a state called abeyance. Like in the movie theater, it just goes into the background. It's there. It knows logically this isn't really happening, but it just sort of shuts up and goes to the side, and the subconscious takes over. And the subconscious mind, whether you're imagining something or watching a movie or reading a book or dreaming, it doesn't know what's real and what's imaginary. It has no way of determining this is actually happening or not. And so scary things make you scared, and funny things make you laugh, and whether you're awake or asleep. The mind doesn't really make a distinction, that part of the mind. Fortunately, the conscious does, but the subconscious mind makes no distinction. So one of the great powers of using self-hypnosis is to imagine what you want as if you already have it. And what happens is the mind thinks it already has it. And if you do it over and over again, your mind thinks it already has it for sure. And if you do it over and over again with great passion, your mind thinks, well, it has it for sure. It really likes having it. And planting suggestions like that cause you to create what you want. I mean, hypnosis, there's lots of names for hypnosis. A pep talk is a name. Affirmations is a name for hypnosis. Anytime that you are imagining or telling yourself to be better, to grow, to create something, to be successful, anytime you're programming your mind that way, you're hypnotizing yourself. Anytime an advertiser on television is attempting to get you to buy their product, they're doing it through a hypnotic process. They're taking you into a hypnotic state. I mean, think about it. At the end of the TV show, you're watching the TV show and the music builds and something's going to happen any minute now and then. Commercial. And then the commercial's louder than the show was, just to make sure you don't go anywhere else. Now, fortunately, we have ways to flip through commercials these days, but in the old days, you had to watch this commercial, and they were telling you whatever it is that they wanted to tell you in this very powerful way with your attention totally fixated on the television screen. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It really does work. So what we have to understand is the hypnotic state is very common. Anytime you're in total focused concentration on one thing and you're really paying attention to just one thing and you're really interested and passionate and thinking about one thing, that's the hypnotic state.
It's an unfortunate word, really. Hypnosis comes from the Greek god hypnos, meaning sleep. And it certainly appears to some people to be a kind of sleep or sleepwalking or somnambulistic, trance-like state. But then if you add on top of that several generations of so-called stage hypnosis, now we've really got a reputation that we've got to deal with.
Well, I mean, from the very beginning, we've had this reputation. When Anton Mesmer, who was the first really to use this in terms of doing healing stuff, he called it animal magnetism. People later called it mesmerism, but he used to wave his hands in front of people thinking he was disrupting some kind of a magnetic field. What he didn't realize was the reason he was hypnotizing people was that it was his authority, for one, and his voice and manner, for two, and the fact that his moving hands was creating this eye fascination for people, and because they expected to, they had the expectation of what was supposed to happen. It was almost like a placebo effect. It caused it to happen. In fact, when the United States government sent Benjamin Franklin to France to explore and see if there's anything to this mesmerism stuff, Franklin came back and basically said, "Oh no, it doesn't. It only works if you believe in it." Well,
that's the point.
That's the point. That is the point.
As does the placebo effect, which even today is yet to be fully appreciated. The implications of, it's just the placebo effect. It's like it's just your imagination. Hey, everything is imagination.
This iPod, it was just Steve Jobs' imagination, you know?
It starts with the idea. Imagination and willpower as a way of describing the subconscious and the conscious mind is interesting too, I think, because you can see how much more important, really, than willpower imagination can be. We have to have will. We need to be able to form intentions, to make a determination, to persevere. These kinds of things, obviously, free will or willpower, that's a real thing. That's the conscious mind. But if the imagination is at odds with the will, like if you are determined, I will do this, but I can't imagine it, well, it's likely you can't have it.
Yeah, I don't remember how long this one goes back, but there was a study a long time ago where they took this board, which was like 6 inches wide and like 10 feet long, and put it on the ground and said, if you walk across the board, I'll give you $1 if you walk across. So somebody walk across the board. Then they took that same board and suspended it 100 feet in the air. They said, now walk across the board. Well, logically, if I could do it on the ground, I should be able to do it in the air. I get paid to do it, but the imagination of falling from 100 feet in the air and the ramifications of that would incredibly overcome the will. And there's no way you'd either risk it, or if you did risk it, you would fail. I mean, the only people that wouldn't fail would be tightrope walkers who go, oh yeah, I can do that, But if you don't know if you could do it, and the ramifications are like dying, most likely your survival instincts are going to kick in and say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you're going to imagine falling, and you're likely to fall.
You're likely to not get on that board 100 feet in the air. Is what
I think lots of us know this feeling. I remember standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and having a thought in my head what it might be like to fall. And then, of course, I reminded myself I was not going to fall, even though there's really no barrier here.
One could. Yeah.
One could really tumble into the Grand Canyon of all things. And then the thought becomes, well, what if you uncontrollably threw yourself off the edge of the Grand Canyon? And I could feel my mind beginning to fixate on this, and I'm sure if I stood there and thought about it long enough, I could lose control and fall into the Grand Canyon. Instead, I changed my mind.
Took a step back, yeah.
Changed my mind. That's what it's all about. That's what imagination is. And if you consider now the stage hypnotist, you can understand that most of the games, the entertainment, the tricks that are played are based on the fact that the hypnotist has, by inducing this level of deep relaxation in the subjects, stimulated their imagination, and they're acting out. They're cooperating, but they are not under any kind of power. This Svengali thing has got to be dismissed if we're to fully understand this two-way street of the alpha brainwave level, that I can put the program in, like Steve says, or think of it as emanating out into the world, this law of attraction, this magnetic net, that is basically you reap what you sow. That's all. It's karma. It's what goes around comes around. It's you get what you expect, and you go where you look, and it's that law played out. It's got 100 different terms or ways of talking about it. And then, of course, as we're saying, meditation is more of a receptive kind of state, good for expressing, for releasing. Again, we want to make sure you understand these terms, but not limited to contemplation. There can be the chanting or the visualization, the guided imagery or sensory imagination. So we're talking about a full range of skill sets, of tools and techniques. One of the ancient ways, I think, to talk about meditation on one hand and what's come to be called hypnosis, for better or for worse, on the other, is the old reference to mystical and the occult. Whereas the occult was basically the manifestation or the magic. Christ, for example, would be an occultist. Now, an Orthodox Christian is going to take exception to that and say, no, this is the Son of God. These are not magic tricks. Well, I don't think they're tricks, but I think Christ did say, these things I do, you can do and more, and was trying to teach us to get on board, tried to get Peter to walk on water if only he could imagine it.
Yeah, right? And anything that seems that much more evolved than your civilization would seem to be magic to you. I mean...
Oh, yeah, if you came upon a microwave in 1942, you'd freak out. Yeah, sure. It'd be the devil's work for sure. So generally, occult, which I remind you means hidden. It's got nothing to do with the dark arts or Satan, or I suppose you could include that in the occult. Basically, a cult done for the self without regard to its impact on others would be black magic. All you got to do is not care about your impact on other people, and that's essentially evil. That's a low bar, but that's where it's set. Just not caring. So in order for magic to be so-called white magic, you have to do it for the greater good of all concerned, or in the name of the Christos, or in the name of Buddha consciousness, right? The enlightenment that says, I want the total win-win situation or nothing at all. I want to work with the universe and with the one life. That's essentially the difference between the white and the so-called black version of magic as occult sciences. The word just means hidden, and given the Crusades and the Inquisition and other forms of persecution by the church and the state, you can understand why this stuff has been hidden. So that's sort of the hypnosis side, traditionally the occult. And then the mystical side, well, that's more the meditation side. That's sort of where the whole idea is not to manifest things into the world, but to lift consciousness, to raise our awareness in states of deep relaxation, so that when you open your eyes after the meditation, you've retained some of that expanded awareness, that, how shall we say, slightly elevated perspective. Steve and I like to call it the bigger picture, the Gestalt, where you not only see more, you see it more completely, and you see the connections and the links that a merely logical person would miss, because they tend to focus only on differences. When you relax and open the mind in a meditative or contemplative state, you're more likely to see the links and the harmony in the bigger picture.
So when you move into the meditative state, it's basically for the purpose of understanding. It's not about programming. It's not about telling yourself. It's about learning from yourself. It's about understanding. So if you break it down into the simplest way of looking at it, there are only two problems in the world. And one problem is I know what I want, but I don't know how to get it. And the other problem is I don't know what I want. Well, hypnosis is if I know what I want, but I don't know how to get it, I can program my mind to get it. But if I don't know what I want, I can't program my mind because I don't know what it is I want. That's where I need to ask. I need to sit receptive and listen through my intuition, for my higher consciousness to respond to the question that only it could answer, which is, what do I want? See, there's lots of ways to meditate, and one of them is to ask a question and listen for an answer. That's a form of meditation. It's a form of reflection and introspection, or in some cases, prayer. But the bottom line is you ask and you listen, and you might get the answer the first time you ask, and you might get it the third time you ask, and you might not get it while you're asking, but because you planted the seed in your mind, one day you're walking down the street and you notice something that triggers it for you, or you're reading a book and you realize in the book that's what it is, or you've created the law of attraction in action. It's working. It's starting to bring that stuff into your consciousness. So
it's like the creative understanding part was growing beneath the surface, and you knew it was down there growing, you just couldn't see it until it suddenly sprouted up and you got the aha all of a sudden.
Right, and you have to have patience and wait for that to happen because, as you told me a long time ago, you can't pull up your carrots to see how they're doing. You got to trust that they're growing underneath there. So one of my favorite forms of meditation is to ask myself about myself, to ask myself, what do I want the most? To ask myself, how can I become better? How can I become happier? And because I'm the only one really that could know the answer to those questions. And so by asking and then just sitting receptive and waiting and listening for an answer, that's a wonderful tool. But sometimes, well, like, what was it, Satchel Paige says, sometimes I sits and thinks, and sometimes I just sits, Sometimes I just sit. Sometimes I sit and I pay attention to my breath going in and out of my nose, and that's about all I'm doing, is just sort of noticing that. Now, it's fascinating because when I first started meditating, I was very young, but I had the idea that I had to do something to meditate. Like I had to quiet my mind. I had to slow down my thinking. I had to shut up what was going on in there to enable myself to meditate. And what I finally came to realize was just the opposite was true, that by meditating, attempting to meditate, that's what happened. Just by meditating, my mind started to slow down, and those voices started to get quiet, and they started to go. I didn't have to try to quiet my mind to meditate. I just had to meditate, and then that noisy mind got quieter and quieter, and finally it quieted down a lot. It never shut up entirely. I've never been able to go 20 minutes without a thought, but I can go long periods of time between thoughts now, and that's a real significant feat for me, I think.
Well, I really like the quotation we put in our newsletter in advance of this particular program. It's Henry Miller saying, if you take the time to deliberately look at something carefully and focus all your attention on this one thing, a whole new magnificent universe can open up, even if it's just like a blade of grass. And of course, there's a famous teaching by Buddha where he shows up at this lecture and doesn't say anything. He's just holding a flower, contemplating the flower during this whole, what had been a speech, but he never said a word, and supposedly hundreds of people in the audience received enlightenment. And then Buddha is quoted later in the sutras as having said, even the miracle of a flower, if we would but allow ourselves to understand just how miraculous a single flower is, our lives would be changed forevermore. I think the secret is to pay attention. And the point is, you're not going to be able to pay attention in normal consciousness because you're overstimulated and stressed, and the mind's not going to let you sit still. It's on guard for danger, right? You can't just drive on the freeway every day, watch television, especially at the rate it now goes, and live in the American lifestyle and not be overstimulated. So the only way to get the attention that opens up these kingdoms of realization, these deep understandings that contain the solutions to every one of your problems. What if your problems are you just can't see the answer even though it's right in front of you? And the reason you can't see it is you're not paying attention for long enough periods of time. And that's because you're overstimulated and have 8 or 10 thoughts demanding your attention at the same time. So try it. Take a breath. We'll guide you into this in a few minutes. We do, as you know, on every one of these programs. Take a breath, relax, feel safe, let go of muscular tension, and everything starts changing. Brain waves change. The chemicals that are generated by the brain changes. The mind, as Steve was just saying, begins to quiet. The emotional nature becomes slowly more and more tranquil and undisturbed, and things just open up for you. You start getting the bigger picture. You start seeing what's been here all along in the flower, in the blade of grass that's miraculous, that little kids see. You watch a little kid, a brand new baby. We talked about this a few weeks ago, crawling around and discovering the world, and their eyes are so wide open. When did you decide to stop doing that? When do we come to a point of real negative hypnosis, a negative trance, a spaced out trance where we stop paying attention at all? And you can drive long distances in your car and you're not even awake. You're in some kind of trance, and suddenly you come to and wonder how you got here. Or whole periods of your day are lost at work. You look at the clock and, wow, 3 hours went by. What did you do? You don't even remember. You weren't even there. Now you know what I'm talking about. And so there are ways of consciously reversing that. Think of the axiom, a watched pot never boils. How do you slow time down? You pay attention. You say, I don't have enough time to pay attention. Pay attention and watch time dilate.
Yeah, that's really one of the most fascinating things about the subconscious mind and using it in these ways is that it doesn't understand time. I mean, you have dreams that seem like they're hours long and they happen in a few seconds. So you can go in and, I mean, I've worked with athletes who can go in and rehearse an entire football game in their mind, in a minute or two, every single play. And it seems normal speed, too, because the mind is capable of dilating time in amazing ways. Just like there's many kinds of meditation, there's many kinds of hypnosis, too. In fact, we talk about the earliest form of hypnosis probably was telling stories around a campfire, or in the earliest days of humanity. We've always done, let me tell you a story is the most powerful hypnotic induction of all. And the concept of bringing someone into a hypnotic state. Now, like, the difference between meditation and hypnosis is you got to be hypnotized by somebody, people think. But there's really no such thing as being hypnotized by somebody. What somebody can do is make suggestions, and then you accepting those suggestions create a self-hypnotic state. There really is no hypnosis. It's all self-hypnosis, because if they say something and you say no, you win. The power is yours to agree or disagree with the suggestions. The suggestions, like the great Rod Serling used to say, are submitted for your approval. And you say yes to them, you empower them. You say no to them, you make them inert. If you say yes to them, you really empower them. If you say yes to them, you sort of empower them. You're in charge. And yes, you can sort of put your conscious mind aside and just go along with whatever the hypnotist is doing. But the key to stage hypnosis, and stage hypnosis is so really different, but the key to stage hypnosis is not hypnosis, it's stage. I mean, the key to stage hypnosis is being a great casting director. If you pick the right people out of the audience, if you pick, gregarious, extroverted people, they're going to do the silly things you want them to do. And they have ways of determining which are which, and the introverts get, not chosen, and the extroverts get chosen. So really, you don't have to be a great hypnotist to do a stage show. You have to be a great entertainer, and you have to be a great casting director. But the key to being a great hypnotist, that is literally like hypnotherapy, helping people by allowing them to move into a self-hypnotic state that is so powerful in terms of healing them, the key, of course, is to create rapport, to create a connection, to create trust, to create a feeling of them being safe with you. And then you make suggestions that they choose to accept or reject. And remember, not only do they choose to accept or reject suggestions, it's not a black or white. They choose to accept them on a 1 to 1,000 scale, or to reject them on a 1 to 1,000 scale. It's how powerfully those suggestions are taken in or rejected by the person that released the key. So the hypnotist has a certain amount of power in that they're making suggestions, but the real power always lies in the person whose the suggestion is being made to, because you never give up your control. And that's evidenced by the fact that a hypnotist can't get you to do something that you wouldn't do. They could get you to do something that you probably wouldn't have done, you'd have never gotten around to do. But if your morals, ethics, social codes, if you're not a murderer, they can't get you to murder. You can't hypnotize somebody to do something that they just wouldn't do.
But your point is so important that it's not what you're told to do, or not what happens to you. It's not the situations we find ourselves in life. It's, are we going to agree?
That's the key. Nice segue, by the way. That's a real great key.
Are we going to agree? I mean, you say you never give up control. Some people do give up control in certain situations. The famous Milgram experiment in the 1960s, where the people who were being experimented upon thought that they had been hired to help administer the experiment on other people. So they didn't know they were the subject. And their job was to ask questions of people in another room. They could hear them. They could hear each other, couldn't see each other. And for a wrong question, they had to administer a shock and then turn the voltage up. And it was indicated on the panel, high voltage, dangerous voltage, fatal voltage, and it gets to the point where the people in the other room are screaming and begging for mercy. And there's a third person there with a white lab coat and a clipboard and a stopwatch.
And probably tortoiseshell glasses.
Yeah,
in my
sure
picture, they got tortoiseshell glasses.
I don't doubt it. And they have that air of authority and respectability. And the only thing that this administrator is allowed to say is, the experiment requires that you continue. They weren't threatened. They weren't being paid for it, so it wasn't like you'll not be paid if you don't do this. And a very high percentage, something like 83 or 85% of the people in this experiment were willing to go into the danger zone, the red zone, fatally, they thought, shocking strangers they did not know in another room because they were told to.
It wasn't their responsibility. Somebody told them to do it.
And when they protested, what was mirrored back to them was the experiment requires that you continue. So how mindless is that? And now you have to ask yourself, are there places in my life that I'm doing that? Do I do that with the news? Do I do that with conventional ways of thinking and problem solving that leads me in the same problem again and again and again? In my relationships with other people, am I flexible and open, or am I rigid in this way and always waiting for, some would say, the other shoe to drop, always waiting for Dad to kick in the door and you're going to get in trouble? A lot of this comes from a childhood where we're raised in an authoritarian fashion and just not given little by little, bit by bit, that extra responsibility to think for ourselves.
So one of the great things about having this altered state you can go into to solve life's basic problems where you don't know what you want or where you do know what you want but you don't know how to get it, is that it takes you out of being under anybody else's authority. That is, you're doing this. You're in charge. You're manifesting what you want. You're asking yourself what you want, and you're programming your own mind to get it. It's taking charge of your life, and there's a lot of authority and responsibility that you get to feel, some ability now to take some responsibility, and you can respond to life more because it's you that's in charge. When you live out in the beta world, when you live out in a multitasking kind of universe and all kinds of things are going on at the same time, you're really not in charge of your life. You're really a creature of habit. You're really doing what you did last time. Almost in every situation, you're doing what you did last time. Almost all the thoughts you're thinking are the same thoughts you thought yesterday and the day before. You're really not doing anything new and innovative or different. That's really that's sort of living in a trance like that. But coming out of that world where you're basically not choosing your life and going into a meditative or a self-hypnotic state, what you're doing now is starting to choose your life. You're starting to say, I want to make the decisions about my life. And you can put yourself into these states in lots and lots of ways. You can do it for moments or minutes or hours, but the most important thing is to do it and to recognize that the key to doing it is to have the consciousness to do it, to decide to do it, to decide to meditate. How do you meditate? There's a dozen ways. You can focus on breathing. You can focus on a candle. You can focus on just listening to a mantra or imagining something or asking yourself a question and listening for the answer. How do you hypnotize yourself? There's lots and lots of ways. You can imagine your feet relaxing and then your ankles and knees and progressively relax your body. You can imagine a heart inside where your heart would be coming up and floating up into your head. That's one of the favorite ones we used to use. You can imagine yourself in a peaceful place, a paradise place. That's one of our favorites too. The first way I ever learned to hypnotize myself was to use 3 words, a physical, an emotional, and a sort of a kinesthetic word. It was heavy, and then peaceful, and then I said to myself, deep sleep. First time I ever hypnotized myself, I said to myself, I feel heavy, I'm peaceful, and now I want to do deep sleep. And I took and changed that over the years many, many different times. I ended up at about 8 years old with a picture of being in this beautiful meadow in Yosemite that I've kept ever since. But there's lots of ways to hypnotize yourself. The key is to decide to do it. It's easy to do. The problem is you don't have a habit of doing it. And so one of the things I focus on most in the seminars that I teach around the world is to help people create a habit of closing their eyes and taking a deep breath and going to that peaceful place or going to that ability to get out of that world into this world inside, even if just for moments, several times a day.
And so there's 2 basic reasons to do that. Yeah, either meditation, to sit receptive and open to new ideas to help you solve those problems where you have no idea what you want, what's the solution, what's the desired outcome. I don't have the vaguest idea. I'll do a meditation and sit with an open mind, a contemplation, if you will. Or it could be a visualization or something, as Steve said, with affirmations and suggestions in it. You'll hear many versions of this in this series. That's one of the benefits of doing a different exercise in every one of these weekly programs. And then the only other kind of problem would be, well, I know what I want, all right. My problem is how to get it or get there or make it happen. And so for that, we need some positive thinking. We need to bring the imagination online and these same levels of deep relaxation to begin to visualize, to feel, to smell, to taste what it's like to already have it. And the brain goes, oh, this is what you want. Or you could look at it as the subconscious mind now says, oh, this is what you want. We can do this. And while you're sound asleep, the mind is working on bringing you toward these desired goals and solutions and results in remarkable ways, sometimes very remarkable ways. 2 reasons to close your eyes and relax. One is meditation. One is manifestation, which traditionally has been called hypnosis. So you can call it whatever you want. You can just say, these are my relaxation exercises, and these are basically the 2 reasons I do it.
And sometimes they work well together. For example, you program your mind to be successful. You visualize this concept of your being successful, and it's not working. Well, then you have to meditate and ask, what's the resistance? What's blocking me? What's in the way? And you find out that the idea of success in your mind is associated with arrogant people who are not very nice, And so you have to realize that. And then you can release that, and now you can go back to the hypnosis part of programming success, of being a person who is successful, but not arrogant and still nice.
Be a nice guy.
Still be a nice guy. So they can work well. If you're asking yourself, what do I want? And then you start to program it, and you're finding any resistance, you go back to asking, what's the resistance? If you're feeling like maybe this isn't what I want, then go back and ask again. Because remember, the question of what do I want has to be re-asked as you mature, as you grow, as you change. What you want when you're 1 decade younger is totally different than when you want a decade later. So this is a fascinating process, and they can work well together. When the hypnosis part works, the programming part works, just let it work. But when it's not working, go back to the meditation part and ask, why isn't it working? And the only place in the whole world the answer to that question exists is inside your mind.
So let's go there, okay? Journey to the center. Take a nice, slow, deep breath. Close your eyes and relax. You see, you want to begin with 3 messages to the brain or to the subconscious that you're really safe. So closing your eyes is a message that you might still be stressed or anxious, but there's no danger out there. See, I'm closing my eyes, and then, that nice, slow, deep breathing, and that wonderful letting go feeling, especially as you exhale. Well, again, the brain of the subconscious says, look, we're closing our eyes, our breathing is slow, and our muscles are relaxed. So whatever the stress or the confusion, it's not about danger. And we can allow ourselves to pay attention. An odd phrase, if you think about it, pay attention, for certainly no effort, let alone payment, is involved. Paying attention or concentration is something you allow yourself to experience even now. It's a letting go. It's a release to find your place of perfect peace.
So be it hypnosis or meditation or any form of concentration, they all begin with the same sensation of feeling safe. So with your eyes closed and breathing deep, moving just a little of the way towards sleep, you relax and release, replacing tension with peace as you unwind, feeling safe in body and mind. And in this place, you can sit and listen within. just with the intention of seeing what goes by. Or in this place, you can sit and begin to ask yourself important questions like, why? In this place, you can decide what it is you really want the most. And in this place, you can set in motion what you need to create it, and then just coast. You can decide what you want. You can program to create. Whatever you do in this alpha state, hypnosis, self-hypnosis, or meditate, it's all great. It's all part of how you can manifest and create. So it always starts with feeling safe and letting go of out there and moving in. That's the place where hypnosis and meditation both begin. And then, whether you send or whether you receive, just sit quietly, let yourself believe that the answers that you desire will come through. And you will make that come true. Hypnosis, meditation begin with this same sensation of letting go of out there and moving in and feeling nice, safe, and clear, releasing all of your fear here in paradise.
Use these wonderful levels of deep relaxation to lead with the feeling you want to end with, to begin with the end in mind in an emotional sense. So I'd like you to feel like a winner right now. Feel like someone who does know what they want. Allow yourself to remember easily several times in the not-so-distant past when you knew exactly what you wanted and found that you were able to create it quite easily, even elegantly, and feel in your body how that feels. And so think now of a problem from your daily life and affairs that is of this first type, where you do not know the solution. It might be right here in front of you, and you wouldn't even recognize it. You don't know the answer, the result that you're looking for. If you had Aladdin's lamp and you rubbed it and the genie came out, you still wouldn't know what to ask for. That kind of a problem. And sit in these levels of mind in meditation. Open and receptive. Holding gently in your mind a single seed thought that you want this situation resolved. You want this problem fixed. You want to move from tension to relaxation. And I could remain quiet for 2 or 3 minutes, for 6, 8, or 10 minutes while you do that. Instead, I'll ask you to remind yourself how easy this will be to do on your own. And you can take as long as you want. Using these states as a meditation to receive some insight, some understanding, and aha, it may even be a major epiphany, could change your life. But at the very least, a resolution or a solution, a realization of exactly the best outcome for you to desire in this particular situation. This is meditation applied to solving the first kind of problem, what if I don't even know what I want?
So, with the ability now to look inside and discover what you want the most, sit and ask yourself questions and see where your mind goes. What do you want the most in your relationship? What do you want the most in your career? What do you want the most in your prosperity and health? And what do you want to bring to your life here? Ask yourself. And know that you do know the answers. It's within you. And once you know what you want the most, once it's very clear, then what you need to do is begin to program your mind to get it, to bring it here. And if it brings up doubt or if it brings up fear, you can go back and through meditation allow that doubt and fear to clear. But otherwise, forge on and program. Imagine what you want the most. As if it's already true, as if it's already now, as if it's already you. And as you imagine what you want over and over again inside your mind, you simply pretend that it's true and it feels true for you. And then most important of all, most important, what you must do is bring passion, great passion from inside right through. It's the passion that empowers the suggestion to do whatever it is that you choose to do.
It's a good idea to remember, especially when we're using visualization to manifest a chosen outcome or a goal, that you remain flexible rather than rigid. You don't need to know exactly how you're going to accomplish it. Only that you've seen yourself accomplishing it, you can repeat that in your mind's eye and feel a very real passion that goes with creating that desired outcome. You can do that. You can do that easily. So you don't need to know every little twist and turn along the way. And if challenged by some cynic or other negative thinker in your life, yeah, you're a big thinker. How are you going to do that, though? Just what do you think you're going to do to get that done? It's often okay to say, I'm not sure. Every day I take steps in that direction. I'm getting closer. I can feel it. And as it unfolds, it becomes more and more clear. You don't have to know every step to the goal. If you know the goal first, then wherever you find yourself, move in that direction toward the goal.
And the goal is a target to get you to move toward. But the target sometimes can change. You have different ideas, your life alters, and things get rearranged. So it's just, what direction do I go now? What's my aim? And then with great passion, take the next step, and you gain. You don't have to know all the steps on the way. You'll figure them out as you go, but what you do need to know is that destination you're heading toward, even if it's immutable or let it flow. Either way, it's still your target. Either way, it must be what's in mind, because that's how you'll know what direction to take your next step. That's how you can find your way. See what you want as if it's already true, over and over with passion in you, and that's where you'll go. That's what you'll create. That's what you'll manifest. And you'll be great at getting what you choose. Remember, your mind, your amazing mind, is a powerful tool for you to use.
So take a nice, slow, deep breath now, pulling in strength and power. And as you exhale, I want you to feel a letting go, as if you're turning this over to the cosmos, to the universe, as if the entire order of things now somehow conspires to support you. Feel that that's true. As you repeat that process one more time, inhale again, pulling in strength and power, and remembering that the universe supports you in your dream, conspires to support you. Exhale, feel the letting go, the turning it over. And now, open your eyes, wide awake and alert, rested, back in the room, feeling fine.
Yeah, it's a wonderful state. And it's easy to get to, really. I mean, close your eyes, take a deep breath, go to a peaceful place. Easy to get to. The challenge, of course, is remembering to go in the busy, hectic days. My best suggestion, the one that's always worked great for me, is I associate it with every time I take a drink of water. You know, every time I take a sip of water, I close my eyes and I let go of whatever tension, anxiety, confusion has built up since my last sip of water. You know, it's like connect it with something you do. Every time, put it on your screensaver or put a little note by your computer or find a way on the hour. But do something to connect with remembering to go there. Because once you create the habit, it's easy to maintain. It's integrating it into your busy life. You know, that's the challenge.
Yeah, after all these years, it's to me just a matter of several times a day at least going there for a kind of a hug.
Yeah, there you go.
A bit of a feel good, you know. Maybe I don't have time to go out and sit on the porch, but I've always got a minute and a half or two to close my eyes and imagine myself sitting on the porch, and I'll leave time to do that later. But then throughout my day, I can take these little mini vacations, these little breaks, where I imagine my problems already being solved. And I understand the problem-solving process as something that makes me better, you know, instead of trying to get to some place where there are no problems. I'm just working on being a better problem solver and just moving up that ladder day by day and several times a day to check in and feel it's a good day. We're doing okay. We're getting stuff done. We're feeling safe and loved, and I can call my friends anytime I want. It's like being your own coach, being your own big brother or big sister, and it's important. You know, it's sort of this self-coaching and self-talk reminds me of a sign in a restaurant in Big Sur that says, chew your food well, if you don't, who will? If we don't love ourselves, respect ourselves, trust ourselves, and encourage ourselves, who's going to do that, right? That's really our job, first and foremostly.
Yeah, it really is. It's sort of overcoming the genetics that really make our negative thoughts so sticky and our positive thoughts so slippery. Because, you know, I mean, in the past, when we lived in a real dangerous world, negative thoughts were leading us to survival, and positive thoughts were like daydreaming and wasting our time. Well, now it's the positive thoughts that lead us to health and well-being and inventions and creations and relationships that work, and it's the negative thoughts that cause us to live in the past in remorse and regret and live in the future in worry. So we need to live in the now, and the way we do that is to get out of that beta world into this alpha world, whether we use a peaceful place or breathing or however you get there. Remember to get there. It makes all the difference in the world.
Hey, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week. Remember to use that forward one to a friend gadget on our website at focusedpassion.com and poke around. There's new stuff there. You might be surprised at what you find. Remember the ED, of course, after the W's. It's focusedpassion.com. Share these programs with your friends. And as always, be gentle, love life, and take care of each other. For Steve Snyder, this is Michael Benner. Aloha from Maui.